Hi there, it's Carl Irwin, and this is one more discussion on general effect in drum corps. So this is going to be a really short discussion because I don't have a lot to say about it. I don't think I can have a lot to say about it. I'm not a judge. I didn't study judging. Haven't been trained as a judge. I certainly know plenty about music adjudication as a music educator, where I've had to do some of that. But when it comes to the DCI sheets and how they're employed, I've not been through any kind of protocol. But I can explain that in general effect, you have a visual general effect, you have a musical general effect, and they're judging the same things. There's essentially three elements that they're looking at. There's an intellectual element, an aesthetic element, and then an emotional element. And the problem with these is, as you hear the words individually, those different categories, each one of them has a significant subjective bent to it. I mean, emotional. What is emotional? What is good in terms of emotional quality? And I think that as fans, we tend to think, well, you have the plurality of points being in general effect, therefore this really determines more than anything. I don't think that's true, as I've been explaining. I think that really technical matters, objective technical matters, actually determine the greater amount of the score. And even as you're looking at general effect and the subjectivity of general effect, there are objective issues that I do want to, particularly one issue I want to discuss here, that I think most people can sense even when looking at a very esoteric show, where you can, I think, fairly universally conclude that one show is better than another, whether you enjoy it or not. As a fan, for all the reasons that fans enjoy shows, it's not relevant. But I think you can objectively still determine how the outcome is going to be. Before I get to that, though, I do want to talk about, we've been discussing melody, the lack of melody in drum corps shows on DCP, and a little bit of a intellectual conversation there about the reasons why melody's gone, a lot of musicological ideas being brought up about it. I kind of tend towards more the phenomenology of things rather than the musicology. I truly do believe that drum corps can play any repertoire. It really doesn't matter what they pick. They can pick anything and have a championship show derived from that music. I don't think that there's criteria even presumed in adjudication that says that the music has to be a certain kind of music or has to be scored in a certain way, except to say it needs to be challenging. It has to be technically challenging, and it has to be performed well. You have to have that. You cannot really be a championship contending score if what you're doing is not challenging and it is not played well. If you're missing one of those, you really can't break up there. And if you do have those things, I posit it really doesn't matter what the repertoire is. It really doesn't. I mean, I say you could have a show that is based on a single, set of, probably not one, but a set of, nursery rhyme melodies, in exposition and development, and win. I don't see a reason why you couldn't. There's nothing in the sheets that prohibits anything like that. In general effect, when you're looking at these issues related to the intellectual, the aesthetic, and the emotional elements of a show, I think you're really dealing with one thing, as I see it. It's just the way I look at it. And as I look at shows, I find that if I look at it through this lens, I can pretty well determine how things are going to come out, or at least determine who's contending where. I might not be able to identify who wins necessarily, especially when you're looking, from the stands or just looking at it on flow or something like that, a stream. Certainly you don't have all the information there. But I think that if you look at the issue of inevitability, if I'm looking at the show, it doesn't really matter if it's esoteric, if it's very mainline, mainstream, easy listening, if it's abstract, or if it's very narrative. It really doesn't matter if whatever it is that they're doing, coherent or not, in terms of meaning. Now, you can have coherence that doesn't have to do with meaning. I don't really want to get into that. But coherent in terms of meaning, concrete meaning. It doesn't matter if what they're doing has inevitability to it. meaning that something's happening here, and the next thing that flows is inevitable. And the next thing that flows is inevitable. And the overall picture has inevitability from here to there. I think that is a really good lens by which you can look at intellectual elements, aesthetic elements, and emotional elements. That something has direction to it. Not necessarily narrative, but it has an inevitable direction. And also, but when I say inevitable, I also don't mean that it can only be this way. I just mean to say that something needs to flow with inevitability such that what happens is one of the strongest of possibilities. That there is a logical nature to what happens next. Perhaps even in an abstract manner. But it has inevitability to it nonetheless. Beyond that, I don't have a lot to say about this. I really don't. I don't think judges really are... I don't think that design teams... Fans like to think that design teams are looking at judges and trying to read their minds with respect to what they as elitists want to see. I don't think that's true. If they were elitists and they wanted to see something in particular, they actually wouldn't be well trained. That's the antithesis of being well trained. Being well trained would mean that, elitist or not, I really don't care what their, suffixes on the end of their name and what their degree status is in musicology or what. I don't care. That means nothing to me. What I want them to be well trained in is the ability to look at any kind of subject matter and adjudicate it for what it intends to be. The judge does not determine what the design team puts on the field. And the judges are not really there. They're not supposed to be there to say you put the wrong subject matter on the field. You should have done this because I like it more and because it speaks more to my elitism. That's not what judges are supposed to do. They're supposed to take what they're given, and they're supposed to go with the explanation that it has and the intention that it seems to be putting forward, and then determine how effectively it does that. And because of that, it literally is apples, oranges, and lemons. I mean, you're not really comparing apples to apples in terms of this general effect. Except to say the concept of inevitability. Does it flow with inevitability? At an intellectual level, if it's messaging, if it's giving me some kind of intellectual material, a message, does it inevitably flow such that it's coherent, even in an abstract way? Is it emotionally coherent in an abstract or mainline way? It doesn't matter. Or is it flow in any other way? So those are my thoughts. Good luck with that.